Hey, welcome to our session. So in this session, we're going to talk about how do we reverse engineer our results before we've actually achieved them, which if we can pull that off is pretty awesome in terms of creating vision for your life and the benchmarks you want to achieve and the results you want to get, because it really, gives us a roadmap from where we are to where we want to go. And it's interesting because the best way to start with reverse engineering your results, regardless of the result you want. Hey man, I want a vibrant relationship. I want to make more money. I want to lose some weight. I want to get more fit. Like whatever the result is that you're looking to achieve, you want to start with your inner game first. You want to start tuning up your inner reality or your inner matrix first. And you want to do that by asking two questions. The first question is, if I achieve the result, how am I likely to feel? So if you were to imagine yourself achieving the result, being in your possession, having in your possession the thing in which you want to attain, whatever that is, becoming the version of the person that you want to become, like whatever the vision is, whatever the outcome, whatever the result is in which you're aspiring to, if you were to imagine the moment upon achieving it, upon it becoming your reality, what do you believe you would feel? What was the emotion that you would most experience? And a lot of people will experience the emotion just thinking about attaining it. And so would you feel proud? Would you feel strong? Would you feel joy? Would you feel freedom? Would you feel fulfilled? Like what? Would you feel peace? Like would you feel love? What would you feel upon the achieving of that outcome, right? Upon having the possession of that thing that you want, whatever it is. And then the second question is, what is the energy or the emotion that's going to be most important to drive with as I'm moving toward the attainment of it, as I'm in the process of creating it, of achieving it, the journey? What's the most important emotion or energy for you to embody as you're on the journey towards something? And so when I remember when I thought, man, I really want to get in better shape, right? I want to get in physically better shape. It's like, how would I feel upon achieving it? It was like, oh, I feel empowered and free, right? And then what's the energy that I'm going to need to fulfill it? Inspiration and confidence, right? So it was like, now I have a little bit of a target to hit, which means when you wake up and you think about what it is you're wanting to achieve, the outcome you want to fulfill, your first job is to feel those emotions, to get inside the experience of those emotions. And then when you're in those emotions, then start asking yourself the question, what's my next best step to take from here that is going to move me toward the attainment and the fulfillment of what I'm looking to achieve? And then not because it's going to happen this way, but more just to train your mind to start thinking in this framework, you then ask yourself, what's the step after that I'm probably going to need to take? And then what's the next step after that I'm probably going to need to take? And then next thing you know, you've mapped out this beautiful journey from where you are to the steps in which you'll need to take from here till the attainment and the fulfillment of your outcome. And now obviously, it very seldom happens the way we think it's going to happen, and that's totally okay, because the thing that's going to ensure the result as you reverse engineer this result and then implement the action plan that you come up with by way of that process of reverse engineering your result is the commitment to stay in consistent action until you fulfill the outcome. And so it is that consistent action and the commitment to be in that consistent action that's ultimately going to get you there. And the reason most people fail when it comes to being in full commitment to the outcome until they get the result and being in that consistent action is because emotion tends to show up and takes them off course, right? Has them quit in some way. And the emotions that tend to surface to have us quit usually starts as like a whisper of doubt. We tend to then get discouraged and we feel sad. We start, sort of feeling like we're beating our head against the wall, and that can become frustrating. Then we become, a bit angry, and then eventually maybe we fall into hopelessness, and then we quit. And so if we look at the process of quitting, it's really an inner reality. It's not because it got hard. It's not because things didn't go our way. It's not because of lack of opportunity. None of that, because there's plenty of people who succeed where we have failed in the past. And we're faced with those same challenges and more and found a way through and achieved their result. And so how do we master the art of consistency is be clear on our destination, like know the result we want to get, because you can't reverse engineer a result if you're not clear on the outcome. So number one is know that outcome, but then the key is harnessing the potential and the power of the feelings and the emotions, the energy and learning to harness those within yourself, within your inner matrix, and then point yourself in a direction by way of leveraging those emotions to get you to take consistent action until you fulfill the outcome and the result. And that consistent action is what's going to guarantee the outcome. And so the reason that the framework doesn't need to be perfect is because if you look at where you are right now, and you reverse engineer those results and you go, hey, this is the way I'm going to feel upon achieving the outcome result. This is the emotion or the feeling that I need to leverage or get good at accessing along the way so that I stay consistent. And then you ask yourself, what's the next best step for me to take from here toward that outcome? And then you kind of imagine what reality looks like after you've taken that step. And you go, great, what would be the step that probably makes sense after that? And you just keep asking the question until you see a path to your outcome. And then when you actually go to take action, the only action you can really take is the next step. So you take that next step. And then once you take that step and you're consistent for long enough, you look around and you go, great, where am I now? And then you ask the same question again. What's the next step toward my outcome, my result? It might be the one you anticipated would be your second step, but it probably won't be. It'll probably be a different version of what makes sense as your next step now, because you now have experiential knowledge. You have information that you didn't have before being in action and before growing a little bit or moving, a few steps toward your outcome and that which you're looking to fulfill. So now that you've taken those steps and you're a little bit closer and you have experiential knowledge, you have some new information available to you, now you look at the lay of the land, ask the same question again, and then you come up with a better idea of what's going to make the most sense as your next step. And you do the same extrapolation. Well, what's probably going to need to happen after that and what's going to need to happen after that. And if you teach the mind to think this way, then it's always taking the pieces of the puzzle on your behalf and going, man, what's the next step from here that I can take that's likely to achieve my outcome result? And then it's just taking this way of being on as a way of thinking. And that way of thinking is then going to support you to achieve the outcome, the result. And so think of reverse engineering as, yes, a way to come up with strategy or a hypothetical idea of how you're going to fulfill an outcome result. But more important than it being correct or accurate is that, number one, it's going to encourage consistency of action because you see where you're going. And number two, it's going to train your mind to think on your behalf in a really powerful way and to function in the world in a way that very few people do. Because if you're constantly in the conversation of what's the next step I can take to fulfill my outcome, what's the next step I can take to fulfill my outcome, and that just becomes the way you think in regard to where you want to go and what you want to achieve in your life, that's going to be a whole lot more powerful than the way most people think, which is here's the reason I can't do it and here's all the stuff that's in my way and here's why it's not going to happen. And so if we really understand the power of training the mind to think on your behalf, you realize that if you take a little time doing that, you basically can become unstoppable. And so play with this framework, reverse engineer the outcome in which you want to achieve, and then immediately start moving toward it, and you might get there even far sooner than you think.